chat about. All right. Hello. Hello, everybody. Everybody who's out there going to be joining us. We'll give a little bit of time as people are getting out of their last meetings and grabbing their lunches and joining us. Hopefully, if you're not in the car or doing your laundry or doing whatever else people are doing in the middle of this whole work from home, work from everywhere, frankly, nowadays. I love that we don't have to go into the office as often as we needed to. Makes the commute a lot shorter when it's just up the stairs or down the hall or something along those lines. And I want to welcome my first guest today, Russ Starke, who is the CEO of Think Company. Russ, thanks so much for joining me today.
Good thing, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Russ and I were on the podcast. Russ joined me a few episodes ago, and I just loved the conversation. I loved the authenticity. I loved that there was no BS. I loved that there were, I love the just ever so much filter, which, we all have to have in the world. But on the whole, it was sort of unfiltered, like, no, look, here's what's going on that's nonsense. Here's what needs to not be nonsense. And, I just really feel like the world, and there's Marcia joining us. Let's bring Marcia in too. Excellent. So the no nonsense conversation is what I wanted to have a little bit more of today. And that is why I invited as well my second guest, Marcia O'Connor, who is the president and CEO of the O'Connor Group. Marcia, thank you for joining today.
Thank you, Laura. Hi, guys. Hi, Russ. How are you?
Hey, Marcia. Good to see you.
You too.
It's funny when I was a kid, high school and college, I used to love to bring together friends of mine from different groups, whether people I worked with when I was waiting tables or friends from school or friends from my hockey team or from whatever else. And it was just like, a bunch of us are going to get together and we're just going to have a little, I was not a party kid by any stretch of the imagination, but my party was like, come over, hang out on Saturdays, we'll get some pizza and do whatever else. And my mother always used to say, oh my gosh, Laura, it would give me so much stress to do this because like nobody who comes to your parties knows each other. They don't how can you expect them to it'll be awkward and uncomfortable. And it just always worked. I don't know. I felt like if I like them, they like me, they're going to like each other and we'll figure out what to talk about. So in that same spirit of bringing awesome people together and knowing that good things are going to come with it, I love these lunch and learn opportunities to bring together my guests from different episodes of the podcast, from Speaking to Influence, and to just allow the conversation to go, and see what happens, see where the conversation leads. So, I was curious, how have you guys been on a lot of podcasts, on other conversations, or was this a first?
Go ahead, Russ.
Not a whole lot, a handful, but yeah.
Okay. Can't say the same. I've been on quite a few. I might have Zoom burnout by now, but the podcast, as well as the Zoom webinars, everything. But the greatest thing is you learn all this new technology that's out there, and it's going to give Zoom a run for its money. But I think it's great to hear all this information out there and seeing people's faces.
And so I'm curious, one of the topics that's become really common for people nowadays is the fact that everybody's back to school, right? Whether or not you have kids, your life has been affected by this newest shift of back to school work because your people have kids or your coworkers have kids or whoever else it is. And there's this whole additional shift. It was a shift that we knew it was coming. We certainly didn't predict COVID and all that hit. We knew it was coming, but we didn't know what it would look like as far as this new school era, whether it's hybrid or it's all virtual or whatever. I'm curious, how has that affected your people? If it has affected your people.
You want to take that?
Yeah, I got that. So half of my people, we did a survey about who basically had the small kids and who's going to need help and who needs nannies and stuff like that. And it affected half my team. And so one of the things that we did is to figure out, who's going to need help, who's not. One of the things we came up with is called family days. And family days are basically a full day that you can take. It's one day per quarter. But the idea behind it is really to you need a family day because the kids have had enough TV screen and you are just ready to pull your hair out. And so we decided to do that. Well, I have an amazing team. So only half of them have kids. And the other half that don't have kids, or kids like mine are in college, they had said, hey, I don't need those family days. Could you give them back to the people that need them? Oh, and so each quarter they're allowed to take so many days, basically, if you need them, but they're there for family days. They don't affect your PTO, your vacation, holiday. It's just the extra thing. And we're also a billable group too. So one of the things that we did do was actually make it, if you can do your 40 hours in 4 days, I have no problem with that. I'm trying to give them as much flexibility as possible because I just know you've got to be patient right now.
Yeah, that's great to have that kind of flexibility and to be able to have those conversations. I think a lot of people are afraid to say, "Oh my God, this hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm in massive scramble mode." And so just to be able to talk to you about it, not necessarily dump, but to say, I need to have a conversation.
Hmm.
Russ, how about you guys?
Yeah, I think we're in a similar mode in that, I mean, we're also a billable company, right? So we live and die on the billable hours, and I think everybody understands that. So it's early in the season for it. I mean, most of us are only a week or two back. My kids are only full time since yesterday. So everybody's trying to figure out what it means. But I think, to Marcia's point, the most important thing was just us saying up front, hey, as we go into the fall, flexibility is the order of the day. And when we asked everybody what they needed, nobody really knows yet. And in fact, pretty much everybody was like, for now, I'm going to do what I've been doing, and I'm going to try to do this between 9 to 5. And I think that's going to be fine. But it was really just us up front saying something similar, that, hey, if we need to get to a point where you need some other kind of flexibility, let's see what it looks like. And it's probably, I don't actually know the numbers, but I would say it's a quarter to a third of our team has school age kids. So we're going to just kind of ride the data and see where it takes us.
And by the way, I want to invite everybody out there who is listening, who's joining us. If you have questions, if you have comments that you'd like to offer either on the topic itself, or especially to ask directly to Marcia or to Russ, if you had a chance to listen to their episodes and there was something that stuck out to you and you really said, you know what, I like this topic, or I had more questions about that, or how do I do X, Y, or Z with my boss, with my employees, with my company, with my clients, by all means, jump in and just join the conversation. That's why we're doing this live, because we want to hear from you. We want the interaction. We want to make ourselves accessible to you. And of course, you can ask me questions too, but you're probably tired of hearing the sound of my voice by now. So we're going to let everybody else take over. What are some of the other challenges that how has COVID and the whole work from home situation, or the evolution of the workplace at least, been affecting you in ways that you may not have anticipated? I mean, not that anything was anticipated, but in additional ways. What are some of the changes you've been experiencing or decisions you've had to make along the way?
Russ, all yours.
Sure. Okay. Well, I mean, one certainly is that I think the rate of communication and the amount of communicating to continuously kind of tell the story about how we're doing as a company is really important. I mean, there's a lot that plays into that. I mean, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in general. And then, when you've got to do things like circle the wagons a little bit and kind of pull in spending and things like that, I think, people require, a lot more consistent communication on like how the company is doing. And I think importantly, it's not just, I mean, it is reassurance, but it's honesty more than anything, of like, hey, this is what we're looking at right now. This is what this could mean. And just being really consistent on that, which, I don't want to say we didn't do it before, but it was not at the kind of clip that it has to be now, which is weekly at a minimum. Just kind of keeping that ball in the air and making sure people, feel like they know how the company is doing,
Yeah, absolutely. I think the transparency in times of fear, transparency is that much more important, so that there's no guessing and fear of the unknown. If you can at least make it known, that's a step in the right direction. Yeah,
and one thing to add before Marcia, you answer is that, interestingly, like that, that transparency, again, like we talked about on the show, like sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't, and I always try to lead with that. But one thing I learned through this whole process was that I was trying to be transparent, but then also, trying to be a cheerleader and trying to uplift and talk about, like, my cautious optimism. And I got a little tripped up there in that, some of that cautious optimism was kind of like taking over the rest of the message. And so then when we had to do a couple other things, like, hey, we're going to need to do this. Hey, we're going to need to do this. Some people were really surprised by it and said, wow, that's not what I thought was going on. I thought we were really on an upward trajectory because you were so upbeat. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So, it's like, I want to remain upbeat and I want to be cautiously optimistic, but I have to make sure that I'm grounded in reality as well, because it's really interesting, the narratives that people walk away with. Like, all of the language was there if you had looked at it on paper, but how you present it and the order in which you present it has a lot of impact on what people walk away with. And I've had to really I've had to be a little more, not somber, but I've had to pull it back a little more, these days, to just make sure that I'm presenting a balanced picture. And again, like we're doing really well considering and looking out there overall. But yeah, it's still an uphill battle, I think, for many of us.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, actually, because that just, my heart did a little happy dance there at the notion of it is a combination of both what you say and how you say it, right? It's not just the adage of it's not what you say, it's how you say it. But when there's that lack of alignment between the two, that something often gets lost in translation, right? The right words and the right content in the right order on paper have to make sense. But the phrase, I think, was a great opportunity there. The idea of cautious optimism, those are kind of two opposite sides. So to be able to be optimistic, but make sure that the caution is still clear, as well as not flipping to the opposite side of the spectrum and being so overwhelmingly cautious that you claim you're optimistic, but nobody thinks that you actually are. So managing to be clear on exactly what you want to convey and mindful of the delivery that you get it through. The little icon is in the upper left-hand corner of everybody's screen right there, but that is exactly the focus of the book, which is speaking to influence, is looking at how to ensure that there is that alignment, whether you're having a one-on-one, whether you're doing a Zoom meeting, whether you're in a giant conference room or a convention center, 2 minutes, 2 hours, it doesn't matter, but ensuring that the alignment between the what you say and the how you say it all kind of comes together, your words, your voice, and your body language, so that people really do get it because they get you. And that's where people start to see you as credible and as trustworthy. And that's when you start to move the needle. So thank you for that opportunity to springboard off of that, Russ. Marcia, what do you think?
Well, I've been actually preaching the 3 C's and a P. So along this whole line, and the 3 C's are basically your care, your compassion, and your communication. And then your P is obviously patience. I think we have a lot of clients that were saying, I wanted people to get back to work immediately and all too. And I said, you got to pull back. You got to ask them what's going on in their lives and all too. And a lot of people were having, they actually have illnesses that they're not even sharing out there. So the fear of coming back in and getting this, virus was actually overwhelming. And so you really had to educate not only your internal team, but your external team too, about making sure that you really listen to your people now and really communicate. And it's not just my team. It's like a family thing now too, because now we're looking out for them as their family and mental health too. I have one of my clients, and he is an employee benefits firm. He said the past 3 months, mental illness claims have gone up 30%. And so when you hear stuff like that, you really have to tell your other CEOs, hey, the 3 C's and a P, don't forget that, and make sure you listen to that. When this all first started, you go through shock, you go through fear, you go through, let's get our stuff together here. So every day for 15 minutes, we had huddles on Zoom, and we were asking them questions like, how you doing today? And to the point where I started to change that, because they were anxious, fear, to the point we were all getting more stressed out a little bit. So we changed the question and to say, give me one good thing that happened today. And it was great to hear all the small wins that people were having, but we all needed to hear that. And we all needed to know that we were in this together. And that really helped us come together even tighter than we ever were before. And I think when they start doing that and relaying those communications out to not only your internal team, but your external team, I think it just really moves mountains and has people really think of how they've been doing things before. Because we're pivoting in so many ways right now, and that's okay. If anything, there is some pivoting that we're doing is actually enhancing and growing what we're currently doing and all too. But again, it goes back to your 3 C's and the P. So now we have a newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks that came back, the O Chronicle. And it's really the team of who was going where, promotions, what's happening with this person, this is the client we just got, yada, yada. And now we're going back to once a month, a full hour Zoom of a catch up. And now we're going back to our town halls, which we had quarterly, because they're how the business is doing and how each department is doing and all too. So we're trying to get that out. And obviously we have the weekly communication, the Thrive, which we're now calling the Connector, which the new version comes out on Wednesday. But the idea behind it is just to keep everybody together and connected and let everybody know that we're all in this together.
Yeah, and I think that's a big challenge is that solidarity and just making sure that it's not just a lot of lip service rah rah, but no, we really are all here together. What other kinds of initiatives have you guys been working on lately? Pandemic or COVID irrespective, if unless it's relevant at that point. What's new? What's on the horizon? What are you each working towards?
Good, Russ.
Well, working towards figuring out what 2021 is going to look like, and I think, I mean, that's our big focus right now. Also understanding that even as we move towards kind of strategic planning for next year, that there's still a lot unknown. I think, everybody's got their different take on the virus and all these other kinds of things. But if you're asking my opinion, this ain't over, and it's nowhere near over.
Yeah.
And so certain parts of the business sector that seem to be acting as if it is, I don't think that's a really smart way to be planning and going into the new year. Believe me when I tell you that no one wants it to be over more than me. But I think we have to be realistic as well. So, there's a little more runway as we come up towards the end of this year to see how things start to change. And I think, going back to school was one of the things we needed to see. How's that going to affect our clients? How's it going to affect us as a team? That was one thing. And that was a data point that we needed. And I think we need to see as we go into flu season, what kind of impact that's going to have overall. And I think, there's a couple more data points, but it's hard to go too far out right now with everything that's going on. So the thing that we've been saying is, as we start planning for each of my teams, what I've been saying is, hey, there are things that we have to talk about in terms of kind of the austerity mode that we're operating in right now. But I think that when you're doing your planning, you should also have a section of that planning that is an if-then section that has an asterisk, which is like, if this turns around and we have the money to make some more investments of this nature, then I want to do this. Because what we can't do is just wait and see, and then, oh, wow, okay, now we have the opportunity, and then be thinking up those things or dreaming up those things. We have to be planning for them now, but understanding that there's an asterisk, right? More of an asterisk than there ever is.
Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 in the row at that point. Yeah. Or on sort of footnote level, sub 3. It's but I like the idea of that contingency planning, and I think that we as individuals, not just as company leaders, but anybody out there, for your personal life, for your professional life, need to start thinking in terms of having at least 2 or 3 options, because we don't know whether it's for school. And okay, right now we're all virtual, but come October 1st or come November 1st or January 1st or something else, are they going to try to go to hybrid? And then 2 weeks later, are they going to shift back? And everything is really up in the air at that point. So having those contingency plans, I think, are going to be critical, and being able to communicate them and articulate them, or ask how best to work them, is going to be part of it as well. Getting that buy-in and that collaboration, or at least putting it on other people's radars that you need to have these, because if they don't understand why you're pinging back and forth, then that makes it harder to get that buy-in and get the support that you'll need to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. And before Marcia takes that and runs with it, I wanted to respond to something that you said, Marcia, too, that like one thing I learned in terms of, again, just the lessons we're learning in communication these days. I never really thought of it before, but that when you said changing the question from how are you doing, like how are you doing is a reflex for me. I see someone, hey, how you doing? And I don't think of it, but I never really realized what a heavy question that can be for people. And I think it is for everybody right now with what we're all going through. But I learned it, front and center after the death of George Floyd, where when I would be catching up with some Black friends of mine, I would say, hey, how you doing? And one of my real close friends said, the amount of time that it would take me to unpack how am I doing right now, I can't even answer that. I can't begin down that path. And I was like, yeah, like how are you doing right now is a pretty heavy question to ask people. So I like the idea, and I've been working through it too, of like thinking, what are other ways that I can engage with people and show them that I care and show them that I'm interested in them, but not putting that kind of weight on them, because you're either going to respond in a very kind of, programmed, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, things are good. Right. Which is surface level. And I don't think we want that. Right. Or you really respond, and it's heavy. and it can dredge up a lot. So that was a big learning for me. And so I like the way that you pivoted there, Marcia, with what the question is, And
I think that a specific example, Russ, is interesting because I used to do a lot of intercultural communications training. That was a big part of my world. And the simple question of how are you doing or how are you is so different in its intention from country to country and culture to culture. In the US, how are you doing, especially here in Philly or certain cities, how you doing is basically just a synonym for hi.
Yeah.
And actually the response most people expect from how you doing is how you doing? And then you keep walking, right? How you doing? How you doing? Keep going on. You don't really look for an answer. In England and some other places, if you get asked that question, you are expected to give a thoughtful response to it. And people are like, oh, you're going to keep talking. Oh, I have to. Okay. So, okay. I'm now paying attention to something I had really no plans on thinking about, but I've now officially engaged. So how do you, in just being mindful of those kinds of things and the fact that even if in this culture, as far as geographically speaking, something that is typically a throwaway question in times of great strife or, of whatever sort, suddenly don't land as lightly as they used to. And just to be prepared that you may get a reaction that's not what you anticipated, but you need to be able to receive it too. So it's what used to be throwaway suddenly isn't anymore. Mm-hmm. So Marcia, not to take away from you, and there's some great comments and questions coming in. And Erica Dotson-Bennett just joined us from Independence. She's in the chat, and she's going to be joining us later this afternoon during happy hour at 4:30. So hopefully everybody will tune back in to hear Erica's contributions. But she just shared that she said, Russ, I appreciate you so much for sharing the story, that your comments speak so beautifully to the concept of purposeful allyship and support for people of color. So thanks for that. And she actually threw out a question that I'm going to ask you guys too in a minute or two, but I want to give Marcia a chance to respond to everything that we've just dumped on top of her and on top of everybody else listening too. Marcia, take it away.
Thank you, guys. Good insight here. I'm getting my own tips in there from all of you guys. This is awesome. So for the fall, it's basically we have 3 goals. We used to have the 1 goal. We've got 3 goals because I told them all. I said we hit 3, number 3, which is like our highest reach. That's awesome. We hit 2. It's still great. We hit 1. We basically survived this year, which is in itself is a humongous accomplishment. Too, because I have a lot of friends who are really struggling right now. And it's just, so you have to keep in mind, you have to be creative. We started so many things through COVID. We have HR headaches and CEO care and our newsletter and our HR office calls. We didn't have them last year, any of these. And to be honest with you, it actually has helped us understand even more of the clients that are out there about what their fears are and what the trends are and how we're trying to basically connect all of them together. And the nicest thing is when I see, like I have talent talks, which I have senior people who would run recruiting, and they actually will talk to each other after the call, which I think is great. That's the whole reason why we're doing this. So I think in a weird way, we're actually creating more of these bonds that are out there, and we're in the same boat, but we're also sharing a lot more ideas versus being competitive with each other. So I see a lot more of that. And I agree with you, Russ. This isn't going to be, we're one and done. This is going to be just, all right, this is how we're going to work the next couple of years. I think the biggest thing we want to make sure is that we got this, we got their backs, and try to take some of that fear out of the way, because fear really holds up a lot of movement out there, and just be real with basically communication. I've had some really, really, really strong communication with my team, and I'm glad that they feel very comfortable to tell me too how they are feeling about different things as well. And so I appreciate that, and I don't think that should change. I do have who knows what the election's going to be. And at first I was actually I had media actually take over me, and I was getting fearful of like, okay, let's not do too much in the fall because of the election. And then I was listening to a podcast on the way home, a long ride, and it literally had said, it's what you want it to be. Don't let other things surround you basically and tell you how to live your life. And I said, oh my God, like that totally resonated with me. And I was letting this define what I want to do with our business and my team. And I said, you're absolutely right. And I went back to my team. I said, this is what we make it. This is what we want to do. This is how we are going to get there. And ironically enough, they're like, let's do it. Let's do this together. And I said, we'll not have blinders on, but just go fast forward and see where it takes us, because we didn't expect this a year ago. We don't know what to expect a year from now. But to me, I feel like saying, like, put your dukes on, here we come, we're going fast forward ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the bracing for fast forward ahead is something that a lot of people were sort of hoping they wouldn't have to do. They were just going to bide their time until it was over. And it's like, no, we're just going to go fast forward straight ahead, full time, full speed. I do want to bring a chance to look at Erica's question that she asked. She said to both of you, how do you motivate your teams to be future oriented? So this is a great segue from Marcia's last comment, to be future oriented while navigating so much uncertainty in their day-to-day lives. That as a coach, and she does leadership and executive training, as a coach, I found this to be very challenging for leaders to do. So how do you motivate your teams to be future oriented while navigating so much day-to-day uncertainty?
I'll circle back on that one. So one of the things I do with my hypos is I do training for them. So I actually send them to courses that used to be in person that are now basically all virtual, a little bit different, but they're with other people who are in that same boat, and we're training them all different areas like business acumen, leadership, just overall presence, appearance, everything else. I think it's still valuable to do that. Obviously you're not getting the full bang because you're not in person, but we just have to change that mindset. And if you believe in your people, you got to spend the time and effort into it. And I have another person that I need to basically teach more about business acumen, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person, my employee. But you have to be creative out of the world of how to make sure they're getting the development that they need, as well as the encouragement too, because being at home sometimes for a lot of people has been very difficult because you're used to the pat in the back of the person next to your left and to your right. And, hooray, everybody's in today. Yeah, we got crock pot lunch. We don't have that right now. So you have to find other ways to really motivate them and get them out of there. And I'll have like quick trivia today, like, answer these 3 questions and you get like a gift card here and there. And hey, kudos to this person over here, kudos to this person over there. But I gotta be honest with you, it's been very, very difficult to do and keep up with it because, like I said, you don't see them every day, so you don't always hear it. So you have to do, I think, as a leader, twice as much now than you've ever done before, just to make sure that you're checking in with your team. And my goal is every week, 3 people that don't report to me, I check in with, just out of the blue. How are you doing? How's the family? I don't care about the work stuff. Tell me how you are doing. And I think that's helped a lot too.
Sure. I can't, I would be willing to stake a decent amount of money that if you polled 1,000 people on the street and said, does someone who you don't report to ever check in to see how you're doing, 998 will probably say no. So I think that's a great suggestion for people to start being a little bit more mindful of. Russ, what about you?
Yeah, I guess the way I would think about it is probably I'm like thinking about how I've reacted to that kind of thing in the past. So I'm using that as a data point, as well as, I guess, what I've kind of been doing consciously or unconsciously with folks. And I think part of it, when you talk about like, when there's so much uncertainty in our day-to-day lives right now, I think it's very hard to motivate people towards the future if you don't like acknowledge the present actively. And I think, if we're having a lot of these kinds of conversations with a lot of people, it can feel like we are acknowledging the present ad nauseum, I think. And it can make us, well, number one, you got to watch that you're not doing it in a way that it becomes a platitude and it isn't legit, right? But I think you also can get to the point where it feels like, okay, like I've said that, I've acknowledged the present, so like I'm not going to do that anymore. But again, like having been on the receiving end of like when either I was going through something personally, or even just the team was, or the company was, and somebody was, just pointing towards the future and not acknowledging what we were living day to day, that you can't motivate people through that, I don't think, because it just comes across as so tone deaf, So I think, sometimes when people and their scenario, like you can acknowledge the present to whatever degree that what they're going through or what their scenario is, but you can also do it on a grander scale, where it's just kind of like, hey, like, this is a tough situation we're in, and I think even saying those kinds of things sets the stage that people are like, all right, this person understands that we're starting from a place of like a couple clicks back from the starting line. But then that helps me envision the future, because at least this person isn't pretending that there isn't all of this other noise and pressure and stress that I have to fight through in order to even think about where I might want to go in the future. I just think it's important to acknowledge that stuff.
Sure. Now, in working with your people and trying to do the, I always like to go back to Jerry Maguire, the help me, help you kind of situation when, excuse me, when your people have needs or they're experiencing challenges in the day to day, regardless of whether, where they are on the org chart, so to speak. But one thing that you both mentioned in your episodes in the podcast, and again, for anybody who's joining us new or just tuning in now, both Russ and Marcia have been guests on the Speaking to Influence podcast. They are both running companies, Think Company and the O'Connor Group. And one of the questions that I ask just about every guest is with regard to managing up, right? When your people are bringing something to you, be it a pitch, an idea, an update of some sort, what do you wish they would do differently? And one thing that you both addressed in your responses was the idea of don't just bring me the problems, bring me solutions. So with regard to all the stuff that's going on now, whether it's COVID, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the in different inclusion statements, whether it is about schools and the whole back to school world that has officially happened as of yesterday, complete. Then what are some of the challenges that people are bringing to you, and are they bringing their own solutions, or who's done something effectively, or what's a way that perhaps would make it more effective? Where has that question started to land nowadays?
Well, I have a few people that are bringing some new ideas to me, and they have some really good. They've mapped out some stuff on all too, and I want to get started on things. I think my only concern is that we have so much stuff going on right now, and we're so busy right now that I think we actually hired like five more people. So when you do all that, that creates a lot of ripples. And what I don't like to do with a smaller company, we're only like 30 people, when you now 35 and all the small little changes like that make ripples. So I love the ideas that they're doing, but I'm putting timelines to it, because when you bring new people on board and you get them acclimated, it's a lot of time and effort already on those teams. But it's like I said, when you put a pebble into a big lake, you see that whole thing. Then you put 5 pebbles and those waves are higher. So what I try to do is not to create too much commotion at one time. And I'll ask them to put a timeline to things instead. Say, hey, can we recircle this in like 30 days? I love what you're doing. I love where we're going with this. I just think too much is going on right now. And, sometimes you get that like, oh, and I said, don't look at it that way. Look at it as I want to make sure that you are effective and this is successful for you. So I want to make sure that we're on the same page. It's hard to do that though, because you don't have as much resources, but I do push back a lot on them. They'll have all these great ideas, and I am that person. It's like, that's a great idea. Why don't you come back to me and basically put a plan of action? Nothing more than like the 3 pages of PowerPoint, how you would do that, what's your budget, and who would be involved. And it's funny, when I do say that, about 50% will get me that. And 50% I never hear from again, because they have the great ideas. They just haven't been able to put it down on paper. And so I laugh because we have so many initiatives going on. I'm more into the lines of like, let's be really effective. And maybe if we're going to do 5 initiatives in 1 year, let's do them well the first time versus thinking about 15 and not really getting any off the ground. So I'm more of that kind of a planner to make sure that they can really think it through and what's needed and the time allotted for it and all too. But that's all about training and being really open and coaching them too.
Yes. Yes. Russ?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing that's been happening recently that I have appreciated is, people coming with solutions, but I think the one solution that keeps coming up a lot lately, which is I think a commentary on me as well, is people kind of willing to take initiatives on themselves, or like actively tell me, hey, like maybe you should get out of the way here and just be a stakeholder and we'll take this, which, I mean, that doesn't sound all that revelatory, but I think it's been happening more as of late, because, like when you're leadership position, it just, you, I think by default care about a lot of things and you want to be involved in a lot of things. And so you get involved in a lot of things, but, then I think people kind of default to you being the gatekeeper to say, yeah, okay, let's do the next step, right? And a lot of times problems can be kind of put on your desk as like we really should address this, and you really the only way you can respond is like, yeah, I'll put that on the list with the 5,000 other things, and I'll get to it here and there. But I think some of these things they're just not moving as quick as people would like them to move, and so in the last few days I've had several people kind of say, hey, how about like I manage this and you just just be a stakeholder and we'll bring stuff to you, but then we can have more movement and everybody will feel better about, us putting some more points on the board here. And I was like, that is unbelievable. Yes, please. Which is funny, right? Because like you would think that like, well, somebody would say, well, why didn't you just come up with that in the first place? But you know how it is. That, and I think even because of what's going on right now with COVID, like I just had a team this morning say, listen, we really want to do this, which is kind of like a pro bono project that we're doing for a community up in North Philly that helps like kind of educate some folks and get people who are not traditionally all that represented in technology, give them more background, more skills. And like, we want to do this, and we get it that like we can only carve out because so much billable time. And I say, look, the company has to invest something. Like, we care about this, so there has to be some skin in the game, but there can't be that much skin in the game. And those folks were like, yeah, well, we want to keep this moving, and like, what else am I doing on the weekends? So like, we're gonna do some weekend time, we're gonna do some after hours time, like we're gonna lean in and get this done. And I'm just again, not that we don't see it during normal times, but I think people are pulled in so many directions, and there's a lot of really cool social stuff going on that's not happening now. And so I'm seeing a lot of like folks just grabbing the reins in a way that maybe I didn't see before. Yeah, we're gonna just do this. Are you good with it? And that's what they're asking. Not what's next, but just, are you okay with this? And I love that.
That's great. What other kinds of, are there other kinds of volunteer projects or initiatives that people are taking up that are sort of on the side, not technically, job oriented necessarily, but just like, this matters to us. We want to do something. We're willing to put in the time, the effort, make the connections, or willing to add this to my plate, even though I don't have to. Are you seeing a lot of that?
We're seeing a lot of it in kind of like that education space that I was just talking about, because I think like we've done a lot over the years of all of us on every other, what was it, like one Monday a month, all of us going in and volunteering at Broad Street Ministry to serve and like doing that stuff. But and that's all fantastic stuff. But same thing, like I guess I don't know if you get fatigued with that over time or whatever it is, but it's like, it was interesting. Like someone even internally said at some point, like like writing a check or making a big decision like that, like that's, even though it's a lot of money, like it's easy. That's easy. What's not easy is like, we have skills and abilities that like we're a pretty niche company. Like not a lot of people can do what we can do. So when we can point to places, times when we can take our skills and help other people acquire those skills, or help them tackle things that would be really like cost prohibitive to do otherwise, and do those things pro bono, that really gets everybody really excited. Because they're using their skills to really better the world, which is it's a story that we all want to tell and don't always get to.
Sure. And I think the novelty helps, right? You can do service projects of the same sort over and over again, volunteering at the same ministry or feeding whatever population, et cetera. But sometimes you just need a change. So having the opportunity to serve in a different way, or to use your skills in a way that creates a different kind of a good, it's just nice to mix it up. There's nothing wrong with doing one versus the other. It's not that one is worth more than the other, but novelty, variety is the spice of life, as they say. So it's great that you're giving people that opportunity as well. Marcia?
Yeah, so this is one of our areas. So we have a thing called Culture Club, which is basically like our social group. We have Connectors Who Care, which is our philanthropic group. And to be honest with you, we would actually have something planned every single month. And typically it was like a food bank, or putting peanut butter and jelly sandwiches together for the homeless. Every month is something. And I actually have people on my team who are in charge of these initiatives. And then they have a team of people underneath all that. And then we would support all that, and we would do tons of it. Obviously, when COVID hit, everything went like, whoop, back in focus, clients, hours, things like that. And a lot of that, not that it went away, it was just everybody was heads down and figuring out, just let's survive this. And I think now that we've gotten to a peak of, okay, we got this now. It's a new world, but we'll make it work. The ideas are popping. We just had a call this morning with my Culture Club group about what we're going to do and how we're going to do these surprises for my team, for the month of September, one October, one December. Like the town halls are coming back, and you always get like the swag and all too with that. But one of the things that's great is we got asked, I'm a part of another group with entrepreneurs and just helping out a great organization in Camden. And just to have them in regards to, let's do a mock interview. Well, I'm like, well, that's right up our alley. Instead of just me doing it because I was busy, can I volunteer like some of my team members? And my team members were like, absolutely, we're in it. So they set up a time to talk to these kids who were trying to make it in the world and have massive just obstacles and hurdles in front of them. And it was so great today because one of the calls we had, and she said to me, she goes, thank you for letting me do that. She goes, because the nicest thing she said is like, thank you much for helping me. And she said, no, thanks for helping me understand, why I'm here and what I do, and what I do makes a difference, because you are such like a role model to me. And so stuff like that doesn't really cost a lot of money, guys, but it's just, there's so much need out there right now and help. And right now, I don't think it makes you feel any better unless you help somebody else out right now. And I think that's like the greatest joy that anybody can do. This is why we have our Connectors Who Care group. And then we try to do as much of that as possible. But stuff like that's a lot easier. I mean, organizing like the food drives and all, we've done that too, but it is harder to do because everybody's trying to rush, make dinner and everything else. So do something that they feel like they're giving back, but it's a little bit easier to coordinate right now.
Right. Right. I just saw a quote this morning. I have one of those quote motivation, whatever apps that pops up some little happy thoughts here and there, things to keep you focused and grounded. And I think the one from this morning was that happiness, something along the lines of happiness is actually a byproduct of helping others to be happy. Right. It's not just about doing something for yourself.
Yeah. Yep. And also like, I just saw that question come up from Holly. For Marcia and I, what motivates you? Which is like a harder question to answer than it should be. I think I was like, how would I answer that? But
so I want to highlight what that was, just because you went past it really quick. So if anybody out there is listening and doesn't see that question popping up, so Holly is tuning in through YouTube, and she asked for both Russ and Marcia. We've been talking, so much about how you motivate your people, but what motivates you?
Yeah, but what you both just said, I was like, one like quote that I have that I don't know where I got it. Something I say is like when my wife and I are trying to figure out things in our own life, and then I say it to other people too, is like, I really feel like in life, there is one metric. There is only one metric. And that metric is happiness. Are you happy or not? And happy, because I think people like, they layer on all these other metrics. And I'm not saying that happiness isn't comprised of other sub things. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, it's like, that's the only metric. Because that's the conversation I'm having with my kids right now, because they're like very fascinated by money and things like that right now. They're at that age. And it's like, and we're having that conversation where it's like, look, there are people who have more money than you can imagine, and they are miserable. And you don't want that. Right. Because that's not the metric. That's not what you're going after. Money is nice. And maybe it, and it supports certain things and Maslow's hierarchy and all that. Right. But happiness is the main metric in life. So I could go deeper on like what I think motivates me, but it's like the thing I was gonna say is like, do you remember in I guess it was the 90s, the Saturday Night Live, and John Lovitz would do that thing and he would go like, why can't we just all get along? And that would get a big laugh. Well, like I never thought that was all that funny, because like that's kind of who I am as a person. Like what motivates me is like, I just really want to see people get along. I think it matters. And so one of the things that motivates me is, yes, doing the great work that our company does. And of course, all of those things. And I do love what we do. And I think it's important. And I think it makes people's lives better. But what really motivates me is working on a company that like can be an example for how people from all different backgrounds, all different thought processes, wherever they're coming from, can work together to do awesome things that are so much better than the sum of their parts, and even better because of the diversity involved. And then be an example where anybody who thinks, why can't we just get along, is funny, be like, sorry. Like, this is an example right here of how this can be done. So I don't want to hear any other rhetoric that says anything other than us getting along and doing good things together as a human race is like a valiant pursuit. I don't want to hear anything else but that. And so like that is what motivates me. And I don't care how idealistic it sounds. That's something that keeps me pumped.
Marcia, are you idealistic in any way, and unapologetically so?
I'm all about making a difference in this world, one piece at a time. And I'm also about connecting people. I find a lot of joy in that. And that's one of our hashtags is Connectors Who Care. And I really believe all of us really do that. And I'm more about the givers than the takers. There's a lot of takers out there. They don't do well on my team. I can tell you I like the givers because I really believe that we are that. I would say, take care of yourself there too. But there's something to be said when you're helping out somebody else who needs your help, even if it's just an ear or, like I said, a mock interview or just something to help out, or a connection and all too. Take the time to do that, because you never know when you're going to be in that situation yourself. And just having those little connections out there. And it's not only that. I know when someone calls me like out of the blue, I'm like, there's a reason why this person's calling me. I'm going to take this call because I haven't talked to him forever. And then you realize there was a reason and didn't see it right away. And so I think it's really, you have the opportunity to make a difference every single day. And I can't stress that more enough, because we're very fortunate to live the lives that we live, and a lot of hard work. Don't get me wrong, that has not been easy to get here. But I got to tell you, I don't know what the future holds in the next 5 years, but what I can do is basically feel as if I made a difference today, and make sure my team feels like they made a difference today. And then tomorrow's a whole new journey. So as Harriet Stein says to me all the time, mindfulness is the key, and just like really about today, and make sure you made the most of today. That's what we do.
Yes. And one of the things that I love about both of you, frankly, is that you are both, to use your term, Marcia, connectors. You are great about seeing different people and saying, you need to meet you and you should be part of this. And, Marcia, you and I have made all sorts of connections over the last couple of years. And, Russ, we met more recently, but, it's funny how this is all sort of coming full circle, in that one of the connections you made for me was to the organization Leadership Philadelphia, which has been really interesting. And I was grateful to have, right under the wire, got in the application for the cohort and was accepted. We just started last week, which has been a lot of fun. And I'm very excited to see where it goes in seeing where I can learn more about and contribute to the development of the Philadelphia overall as a community. But as part of the interview and part of the ongoing sort of identity with the organization, one of the things they ask you for is a tagline. If you had to essentialize yourself and put a little tagline on the end of your name or of who you are, what would it be? And I thought, okay, well, frankly, the one that just kept coming to mind over and over was, I feed people. I'm Italian. So I am genetically incapable of cooking for less than 10 people at a time. There will be leftovers no matter how many people are at the table. And if you're going to walk through my door, you're going to eat something. It just come hungry because you're going to leave full. That's the way it works. But it's not just, it's both feed people. And I feel like I'm an educator at heart, and I like to make those connections. I like to give things to people and help them feel like they've learned something, that they got something out of it. And coming back to some of the ministries that you mentioned, and the attitudes with which you have all been participating in them, through my church and through some other organizations, feeding people quite literally is a big part of what I've always done. And whether it's casseroles that I'm putting together for St. John's Hospice in the city, which is a men's homeless facility, et cetera. And somebody asked me once, where do you find the time to sit there and make giant pans of stuff and drop them off here and there? And I just thought to myself, it took me a second to really process the question. And I thought, in the end, in the grand double pan balance of the universe, I would always rather be the person who was momentarily inconvenienced with needing to make the casserole than the person who was standing in line in the rain, the cold, the heat, the whatever it was, hoping to get a scoop of it. And given those, whenever a weekend sort of comes along and I'm going, oh, I just don't have it. Nope. Stop that thought right there. Shut up. You've got the foil pan, you've got the whatever else, just figure something out, put it in that pan and get it over there. So it's, I think, starting with that attitude of gratitude, not to be cliche in those kinds of, rhyming catchphrases of sorts, but the importance of having gratitude helps so much with recognizing my gratitude for our connections and for the contributions you've made on the podcast, people that you've introduced me to, people who hopefully I've been able to introduce you to. And, just feeling like you're making that contribution. I think knowing that your own work matters is something that you can be grateful for. And there's something really sort of beautiful to me in that, the way that goes 360. And I'm starting to get too poetic and completely, I'm glad nobody's diagramming this sentence because it just went all over the place. But, I love the positivity and the attitude that each of you has come to, with each of the contributions that you've been making to the conversation as well as to the organizations. We're starting to get close to the end of our broadcast here. And if anybody else does have additional questions that they'd like to ask to Russ, to Marcia, don't forget, of course, to click the like and the love and the support or whatever other icons you like. If you like thumbs down, hearts, happy faces, whatever makes you happy, we're certainly glad to see as well. And to remember that these conversations, along with the podcast episodes themselves, are archived in video format on my YouTube channel, and they'll also be available. Of course, this live stream will be archived on Facebook itself. But please go to iTunes, go to Spotify, go to whatever other standard podcast platform you listen to, and look for the episodes that are featuring Marcia and featuring Russ. And later today at, of course, 4:30 in the afternoon Eastern time, Erica Dotson-Bennett, once again from Independence Blue Cross, will be joining us, as will Eric Griffin from Mobile Outfitters. And they've got some amazing stories of very different industries, very different roles that they each take on, but with, again, the unifying approach that each of them has taken to challenges of the pivot. And that was a big theme from each of their podcasts interviews as well. The notion of pivot, whether it's in what you produce or in how you produce it or in how you run your organization. And so please do tune in for that conversation later today as well. And once again, going back to my mother's fears, which are my fun, the idea of bringing people together from different worlds who may or may not actually have met, and just knowing that good things are going to happen. I'll look forward to those conversations as well. Russ and Marcia, each of you, if you can give us a couple of suggestions for where we can go to learn more about you and your organizations.
Marcia?
Yeah, thanks, Russ. Mine's really easy. It's just tocgrp.com.
Okay.
And for me, that's just, thinkcompany.com.
And what about any other social media links that you want to share? Or obviously we're here on Facebook and on YouTube right now. Where else can people look for you, or how do they follow you?
We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, O'Connor Group and at O'Connor Group, and we're also on Facebook and on too. But everything is actually on the website too. All of our links to all of our avenues via social media. We are all over the place out there, guys. So once we get your stuff, be careful. We do give you quite a bit of information, but we like also sharing trends and ideas out there too. So we hope it's good. And if you want to hear other stuff out there, let us know.
Okay. Russ?
Yeah, same here. Everything Marcia said, it's, Think Company is all over those same channels, and it's way better looking for Think Company than me, because I have a very tiny diet of social media. Purposefully.
It can get overwhelming, definitely, but we want to make sure that people understand that these kinds of conversations are available too, and it is food for the soul as well as food for the mind, and hopefully food for the company, the organization, and success for all. Any final thoughts you'd like to offer for our listeners?
Go ahead, Russ.
Well, just good luck out there. It was thanks for spending this time with us, and thanks for the questions. And that's all I would say.
And I would say, think of the number 3. And when I say that is, I wake up every day, 3 things to be grateful. And I try to think of like 3 things I want to get done today. I think of 3 ways to basically compliment somebody else. And I try to do it so it's not overbearing for me, because sometimes I look at my schedule, I get overwhelmed. But I also look at the magic number of 3, and I try to end the day as well as saying, for me, it's like, thank God for 3 things as well. And so it's something simple, but the magic, the powerful number of 3 is pretty easy to remember.
Yeah, if I was going to say something more profound like Marcia did than what I said, I think what I would say is, if you're going to go after that one metric of happiness, don't be ashamed of whatever it is that gets you there. Because I was in a meeting like this recently where someone said, did you hear what Mark Cuban's big question was for all leaders during COVID? What have you learned? What new skills have you acquired? And I don't hear that kind of stuff and go, ooh, I don't get jazzed by that. I was just like, oh, give me a break. We managed a company through the worst situation we've dealt with as a country for the last 70 years. I've kept my sanity. I've been there as a friend and as a husband and as a father. That's enough. That's enough. And if I think about the things that bring me happiness, very unashamed, it's that I'm going to go downstairs and just crank some music. Like, that stuff matters to me. It makes me happy. Spending time with my family makes me happy. I don't have some grand narrative that I feel like I need to keep up, and none of us do, right? Whatever the things are that get you towards happiness, that's okay. That's enough. You're winning.
And on that note, I am going to thank both of you once again. Russ Starke from Think Company, Marcia O'Connor from the O'Connor Group. Please do check out their websites, check out their episodes on Speaking to Influence on the podcast. Remember, if you enjoyed this conversation, like it, go to the podcast, subscribe, please download the episodes, be sure to listen and give us that 5-star rating and a great little one-liner review. We want to be able to get this information out to more and more people. So share the word with everybody. Share on social media and anywhere else you'd like. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Laura Sokola with Vocal Impact Productions, and you're listening to Speaking to Influence.